and Ravens and Dolphins oriented. You can find it all in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault at WNST.net. You can also download our TuneIn radio app. We come in crystal clear from anywhere you are. Big week with Ravens shows this week, and certainly a big week for college basketball. If you watch the Terps get annihilated, drilled by Pitt on Tuesday night, certainly some questions in the early part of the season. Another big game coming up on Saturday night as they take on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, who've gotten off to a little bit of a rip-roaring start, had a tough time with North Carolina, but handled Georgetown. Here to talk all things Oak State, we welcome in Mark Cooper Jr. from the Tulsa world of and OSU Sports Extra out in Tulsa, Oklahoma. First off, Mark, welcome in. How's life out in Oklahoma these days?
Thanks. It's pretty good. It's they're starting to get a little bit of college basketball fever here now that football season's winding down.
Yeah, I made it out to Tulsa for the first time in my life last year. I went out there to see Rush, and I had the rental car. It was one of the days when the storms were coming through, and they asked me if I knew where I was parking the car, and I thought it was like a trick question. And then they had to explain to me, like, you guys have tornadoes rolling through there all the time. So, different kind of life in Tulsa, but a beautiful arena and a beautiful town, and apparently a pretty good basketball team Maryland's going to see on Saturday night.
Yeah, the expectations were sort of low for this team coming into the season. New coach Brad Underwood came in from Stephen F. Austin. They, let go of Travis Ford after they went 12-20 a year ago, but they went down to Maui and beat Connecticut, and then they had a tough time with North Carolina, but I think everybody has so far this year. But then they sort of made a statement and beat Georgetown by 27 points, and that got people around here fired up about it. Even though Georgetown's a little bit down, just the name brand opponent for them to beat them like that got people excited. They've scored 90 points or more in all but one of their games, and they've got a point guard in Juwan Evans who a lot of people around here think's got an NBA future, and he's averaging 24 points a game and 5 assists, and is the sort of guy who can lead them to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly on the radar of NBA players at this point. And, look, they're going to have plenty of opportunities to prove themselves, right? I mean, that's part of this whole conference play. It's like Maryland. We might not think much of Indiana or Purdue right now or Michigan State right now, but then you got to go out and fly to these places and see these teams. Certainly for Oklahoma State, and a year after they go 12-20 and they're making changes there, they're going to see Baylor. They're going to see Kansas. They're going to see Iowa State. They're going to see some really good basketball teams here this year.
Yeah, no doubt. Underwood wants to schedule a tough non-conference schedule, and he did that a little bit with them being in Maui, and this is a Maryland game that was previously scheduled. They play Wichita State in a couple weeks. But yeah, I mean, they kick off conference play with West Virginia, Texas, Baylor, Iowa State, and Kansas back to back. That's an impossible 5-game stretch for a team that isn't prepared, and I imagine they're going to take their lumps once they get into Big 12 play, but it's interesting around here. Last year, I think fan support sort of hit a low point. This is a place where there's a lot of tradition. Gallagher Arena, used to be known as one of the more rowdiest arenas in the country, and Eddie Sutton took the team to 2 Final Fours in his tenure at Oklahoma State. But last year, people stopped being interested in the team because they weren't winning and they weren't very exciting to watch. Brad Underwood's come in after taking Stephen F. Austin to the NCAA tournament and winning some games there, and he sort of implemented an up-tempo offensive style that had them score 100 points in each of their first 3 games. So not only are they interested because they're winning, but this is a team that's pretty fun to watch. They like to try to get out and run. They try to run teams into turnovers. That's what they do. It's very similar to the way West Virginia runs their team now, where they're trying to force the opponent into a ton of mistakes.
Well, Oklahoma State's always been on my radar, mainly because Jim Traber is a local here who was out there, and I've always done some radio with him over the course of 20 years. And beyond that, Oklahoma State played. The one time we had NCAA tournament play in Baltimore where we were, a hub for the first weekend of March Madness, Oklahoma State was one of the teams that came in. Wake Forest came in with Tim Duncan, but Oklahoma State came in with a Randy Rutherford big country team that was just dynamite, during that Sutton era you talk about. And, as far as the weirdness of Maryland playing them, Dude, everything's weird when you're Maryland and used to play North Carolina and NC State and go down Tobacco Road and Duke and all that. And now you're on planes to Illinois and Iowa. Oklahoma State just sort of fits the profile of sort of the weirdness of the schedule where a team like this comes in and, quite frankly, Maryland fans are just trying to figure out who's at Indiana and who's at Michigan State at this point, let alone Pitt the other night, who just really kind of ran Maryland out of the gym. And Maryland is playing with a bunch of freshmen. All the big guys are gone in the one-year holdovers that thought they were going to go to the NBA. Some of them did, and some of them are trying to figure their way around Europe right now, amongst other places. But this is a real young team, and no one really knows what Maryland has right now. It's all on potential and all on, well, we're going to have these guys 2 or 3 years from now, unlike last year's team. It sounds to me like Oklahoma State is just trying to put some roots down, and this would be a nice feather in their cap to go on the road and win a Saturday night game at a place like Maryland, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a month ago, nobody really looked at this game as a game they expected Oklahoma State to win, and Maui changed their expectations a little bit because they're a similar team to Maryland in that they're pretty young and inexperienced. You know, they've got 2 seniors, one in Phil Forte who's been playing a whole bunch. Even back when Marcus Smart was on the team, he was their 6th man and their best 3-point shooter. And he's a 5th-year senior, a guy who hasn't won an NCAA tournament game and is trying to do that. But beyond him, it's a lot of young guys. It's Juwan Evans, who's a sophomore point guard who played half of last season before he got hurt, scored 42 points against Oklahoma, but was up and down last year and is now sort of finding his game. And then a freshman in Cameron McGriff, who threw down a monster dunk against Georgetown last week, a 6'7" sort of wing player who they're very excited about and is contributing a bunch. A junior in Jeffrey Carroll who comes off the bench and averages 17 points a game. First time in his career, he's really been a major contributor to this team. So it's a lot of moving parts. They've been playing 10, 11, 12 guys in some of these early games because Underwood's trying to figure out, who's the winning combination. He's tweaked his starting lineup a few different times. They moved a freshman 7-footer into the starting lineup for the Georgetown game, and he played pretty well. He outplayed he's tweaked his starting lineup a few different times. They moved a freshman 7-footer into the starting lineup for the Georgetown game, and he played pretty well. He outplayed the previous starting center. So they're in a similar position to Maryland. It's going to be 2 teams that are still trying to figure out who they are. And whoever gets this win, I think it'll probably send them in the right direction to finish the non-conference play.
All these coaches have different philosophies, and I think they go through all of this. And from, Turgeon going from Wichita State through the whole ringer and winding up in Maryland, you wonder whether the Maui thing is good for your program, certainly recruiting-wise, and you take some of the, the donors and the sponsors and the fans. And, they played down in Cancun a couple years ago. They've played down in the Bahamas and whatnot. This year they went up and played up in New York, and really got taken to the wire by a couple of teams that you wouldn't have expected when you signed up. And they haven't done anything particularly sexy here. And meantime, Oklahoma State's recruiting apparently out of Dallas, right? I mean, that's what's their lifeblood out on the court are Dallas kids, right?
No doubt, that's absolutely the case. And their 2 best players, Evans and Forte, are guys who finished their careers at Dallas high schools, and that's really where so many of their players. Two members of their freshman class are Dallas guys, and when you go back and look at their team historically, Marcus Smart was a guy from outside of Dallas. Brian Nash was a guy from outside of Dallas. That's their main recruiting hub. Now, this year's coaching staff, they've got an assistant with some New York City connections. They've got a couple assistants who can recruit internationally. That's something that they're really trying to expand on. They brought in a 7-footer who's from the Netherlands this year that's a freshman. And so they're trying to expand that with this new coaching staff and getting into other areas. But you're right, Dallas is the lifeblood for this team. It's where they have to get 1 or 2 guys every year to sort of sustain a roster with some depth.
All right, Mark. Well, I appreciate the updates here, man. Mark Cooper does everything Oklahoma State and the Cowboys football and basketball out of Tulsa world. Busy time in the football world, right? I mean, if you're just covering football in any of the big conferences, this is a challenging month, I think, all the way around because there's 5 conferences and 4 teams, right? No doubt, and it's a Big 12 championship game / rivalry game in the state of Oklahoma this weekend. All right, man. Well, hold down the fort there, and we'll watch some basketball on Saturday night. It was great to visit with you. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You got it. Mark Cooper from Tulsa World. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Mark_Cooper JR. And a little preview there for the Turtles, who struggled mightily on Tuesday night against Pitt. Need to get a better shooting effort, and certainly very, very streaky Terps team we've seen here in the early going. You can find me out in the Bahia Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. All of our Ravens stuff from earlier in the week with Zach Orr, as well as Anthony Levine and Dennis Pitta and Barry Trotz and all the good Stabino Rants, and all that's in the Bahia Toyota Audio Vault. You can find that anytime. Morning newspaper ships to you at 7 a.m. each and every morning. It is brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life there. And breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. Grab your phone, grab your mobile device, sign up. You'll always be in the know first. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis Colossus will be here Thursdays always from 3 until 5, except on Thanksgiving. We moved that to Wednesday. That was just for last week. Getting you ready for the Fish and the Ravens as well. I'm Nestor. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. Anywhere you are, we are. WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.